for those of you who don't know me, my name is Hala, and I am a professional Christian life coach who is extremely passionate about helping women identify and walk boldly and confidently as the woman God has created them to be. I help them to figure out what their values are, their passions, their talents, who they are at their core, and then work with them to figure out the tools that they need to be able to confidently and courageously be that woman. One of my favorite things to do with my podcast is to share the stories of women who are living out their purpose or are pursuing it wholeheartedly. And purpose, as I define it, is being exactly who God has created you to be. Today, we are interviewing Jackie Wilson. Jackie is an entrepreneur who owns 3 different businesses, one of which is Jackie's Sweet Shapes, a cookie business. And what started out as a conversation that we thought would be all about passion turned into so much more. Jackie has many different passions, all of which she shares about in our conversation. Not only that, but she also talks about some trials that she and her husband have gone through and what she's learned from them. She shares very vulnerably about being a workaholic. It's an unbelievable conversation. Jackie is such an amazing human and now has become a friend of mine. If you are someone who's needing a boost of confidence to pursue your passion, this is a great episode for you to listen to. I'm so excited to share my conversation with Jackie Wilson. Hi, my name is Hala. As a professional life coach, I help women identify and put into action their values, passions, and talents so they can live the purpose-filled life God's already designed for them. Are you ready to live a purpose-filled life? Let's do this. Awesome. Hi, Jackie. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for joining us on the Purpose-Filled Life podcast tonight.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk and chat about our topic today.
Totally. So let's just start. Can you take a couple minutes to just introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jackie Wilson. I'm 27 years old. I am a personal trainer. I love swimming. I operate a full-time bakery, and I do custom cookies. I recently got into cakes and cupcakes, which are super fun. But I teach cookie decorating classes, and I have always been somebody who just wanted to do something I loved. I don't want to just have like a desk job. So I've always kind of dabbled in things from swimming, personal training, cookies, and I love what I do and putting smiles on people's faces. I absolutely love iced coffee. Starbucks is my jam. I love animals, and I love God, my husband, my family. I'm pretty goofy. My motto is like, just enjoy life, live it to the fullest. And, like priority is your family and God. And so that's always been my motto in life.
Love that. So cool. I am a huge iced coffee drinker as well. Love that you love Starbucks. Big fan over here. Awesome. And Jackie, it sounds like you've got a lot of different passions and things. Before we get into that, how would you describe the phase of life that you're currently in?
So I would describe it as kind of like a dreaming phase. We're sort of in this weird transition of like, we're recovering from trauma from the past 2 years, but it finally seems like things are looking up. And so we're sort of in this really fun time of just dreaming about our future and thinking about the things that we've been wanting for a while, but God said, not yet, and just paused and had some crazy stuff happen in the last 2 years. But now we're really excited about starting a family, hopefully get pregnant this summer. And then just kind of in this like dreaming of, it's like almost feels like a midlife crisis, even though I'm 27. It sort of has felt like, wow, what do I want to do with my life now? Things are starting to look better. I'm not in the survival mode anymore. And so that I'm really excited with where I'm at right now.
So cool. Oh, I'm so tempted to ask you about that. Let's wait though, because I do want to hear a little bit about what you mentioned about kind of this trials that you've gone through, or can you share a little about that? Do you mind?
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's a long story, so I'll try to condense it as best as possible. But life was super easy and good when we first got married 4 years ago. and, kind of just was in this like bliss of nothing could go wrong. And I ended up doing cookies just for fun. It was in my mind, it was just fun money. And my husband, he got injured at work about 2 years ago, and then he lost his job. They fired him because they didn't want to deal with it. And that led me, because I was just doing fun stuff on the side, and his money was paying all of our bills. And so I immediately went into hustle mode and just had to start making money to pay the bills. And of course, during that time, we had a lot of medical expenses from his accident because workers' comp said they wouldn't pay for it. His ex-boss really did some shady things. So that was really hard. And he was bedridden for about 4 months. So here I was working to pay the bills and taking care of him. And so that was just shocking. At first, we were just shocked. And looking back, I'm like, I don't know how I functioned during that time. But he couldn't get another job because he was injured. So he decided he wanted to go back to grad school. And then that's what brought us to Florida. We were living in Louisiana at the time. We moved to Florida so he could get his master's degree at UF. And all that time, I was just doing my cookies and my personal training, and just sort of didn't know what was going on and how I was going to make it. And then after that, when we kind of thought, okay, things are getting better, then he got hurt again, and then he landed in the hospital. And this was almost exactly 1 year after the work injury. And this was a totally separate thing. And we were in the hospital, and they basically told us if you hadn't come when you did, he probably would have died. So to hear that, we're just thinking, what are you talking? Like, we didn't have an answer. So to just hear that he could have died, in our mind, we're like, from what? Like, what are you talking about? And so that he was in the hospital for 2 weeks a year ago, was right when COVID started breaking out, and everything went on lockdown while he was there. And so I couldn't be with him for half the stay. And in that time, just sort of wrestling with God, like, why is everything getting worse when I feel like I've had all that I can handle? And then everything just kept getting worse. And then after that, so that was a year ago. Since then, we've had a lot of just crazy like stuff happen that should never happen, basically. Like we had carbon monoxide exposure in the house that we were renting, and then they kicked us out because they thought we were going to sue them. And so then we were homeless for a week, and we ended up finding a house, and now that's where we're living right now. And we lost the lawsuit because his boss ended up like making documentation disappear. So it was like time and time again, it's like we would tell these stories to our friends and family, and they would say, that just doesn't happen to people. This is like from a movie. You have, with the lawsuit, we had everything backing us up, and then we lost it. And then with the house, it was like, what? We just happened to pick one house that made us extremely sick, and then got kicked out and blamed for it. So and there's been even more in there, but it really felt like we could not catch a break, and just wondering, are we just cursed? Do we just have this curse on us, and nothing's ever going to get better? But I think during that time, we realized, like what I realized, my motto became, take one day at a time. Just appreciate what you have today. You don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. And so every day, I'm just grateful that my husband is still here, that we're great friends, that he's, doing well. He still has some health issues because we still didn't get any answers. But just taking one day at a time, and, saying, life is hard, but I can focus on all this stuff that's terrible, or I can just really be grateful for everything that's good. Because in that time, there was a lot of good stuff, but if we had focused on all the bad stuff, we probably would have forgot. And so I think clinging to what is good and just trying to persevere, knowing one day, this will all be better. And I didn't want to believe we were cursed. And now 2 years later, things are finally looking up. But that was a lot, and still kind of processing some of that trauma from the last 2 years, and slowing down and taking that time to process has been really helpful. Because we were in survival mode, but now we can kind of reflect and say, okay, that was crazy. What did we learn from it? Where do we want to go from here?
Man, thank you so much for sharing that. I can't imagine going through one of those situations, let alone all of them in the middle of a pandemic. And whew, so I'm very happy to hear that you're on this side of things. Can you share a little bit about what you're dreaming about? Is that okay?
Yeah. So, we've always wanted to be parents. Like even when we were engaged, we said we want to get, have a kid young, like first year, second year of marriage, and then of course he got injured 2 years later. So we were like, oh, okay, maybe not. But we are really excited. That's like a huge dream. Is that we want to start trying to have kids, and so trying to get pregnant this summer, which is like 2 months away. And
Mm.
so, yeah, I'm like dreaming about that. Of course, I don't know all of what it's going to entail, but I'm excited about that future, whether it's adopting or, if we can't have kids, cool, God's will, we'll adopt. And so just starting a family is really something we're dreaming about. And I think for me, like one of my long-term goals is to be able to like open up a brick and mortar. So right now I'm just doing my business out of my house, and legally I can, which is great. But one day I'm like, I really want to have a coffee shop and a bakery,
Love that.
and definitely have those two because coffee is my favorite, and I love baked goods. And so having a coffee shop with lots of baked goods, that's kind of like a 5 to 10 year dream. And yeah, I think for me right now, my biggest dream is just starting a family.
So fun. Um, I would love to hear more about your cookie business as well. And there's actually a couple different businesses within your cookie business, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken, right? Yeah. So let's when did this joy or passion for making cookies start?
It started probably about 8 years ago. I just did it for fun. It was just a hobby. I've always liked baking. I used to do candy making. My grandfather, when I was 11, he taught me how to make like fudge and peanut butter balls and bonbons and brittle, all that stuff. And so about 8 years ago, these cookies were not super popular yet, but they were starting to kind of come out. And I had a friend who did it, and I said, can you teach me how to do these? And she taught me for about 4 hours, and I was completely hooked. It was just a hobby. I was doing it for a couple of years. I really wasn't very good at that time. Looking back on pictures, not that great. But then in college, I needed to find some money to pay for tuition. It was like $2,000. And I don't know why I was not prepared to pay, but I called my dad and was like, pretty much asking for money, and he just said just figure it out. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'll figure it out. Well, so I had the cookies that I was doing for fun, so I was just like, well, let me just start this business. It was really as nonchalant as that sounds, like, okay. And so I started selling on Etsy and to friends, and literally within 2 months I somehow had like $3,000 to pay for school, and then had this great business, and people were coming back for more and giving me 5-star reviews. So I said, well, I guess I gotta run with this now. And so that was like how it started, which is pretty kind of funny. I created the name, everything, just kind of overnight. And I started selling them, and then got better and better to the point where I could increase my prices, and then to a point where I had so much demand that I just said, I'll just do this full time. But that's how it started.
That is so cool. So that's how it started. I like that your dad was just like, figure it out, Jackie. He clearly
Yeah.
had confidence in you that you would. Have you
Yeah.
always had like an entrepreneurial mind, or is that something that your parents raised you with, or how did he know, like, yep, just figure it out, you'll do it?
Yeah, I really like money. It's kind of bad, good and bad. But when I was like 9 years old, I was selling jewelry. I got into doing cards. I would sell handmade cards. I once when I think I was about 12 or 13, I wanted to have money to buy something for my sister's high school graduation present. And somehow I made $400 on homemade cards and took her to Disney. And, it was really fun. So that was our gift. And it was really memorable. And then I did candies, and yeah, I just always sold something. I just always wanted to. I'm very independent. I've done swim coaching, swim lessons by myself. Just had my own business. I actually currently own 3 businesses, and I don't know. I guess my dad he said it tore him up to say those words, because I'm his baby. Like, we're really close. And he said, I just didn't want to say it, but he said, I knew it would be the best thing for you. And so I remember him, it didn't sound like he was torn up, but he was like, yeah, it was really hard to say that. And he said, I knew you would figure it out. And sure enough, I did. Looking back, I'm still kind of blown away that that's what I came up with, because at the time I had swimming, I could have done that, whatever. But yeah, I've always just really enjoyed not being strapped down. I'm not really a super good team player, which is probably not good, but I'm very independent. I always like being my own boss. And so I have always just wanted to just do my own thing, and I don't want anybody to tell me what to do.
Amazing. And look at you now, you own 3 businesses. So cool. So how has your business progressed from that starting point to now?
Yeah, I would say I didn't have a whole lot of focus, or, in the beginning it was just kind of, well, if somebody wants it, then I'll do it. I overworked myself a lot. I got into so many things, and then was stretched so thin that I didn't take care of myself. I didn't, I just felt like I was doing what other people wanted of me, and not really what I wanted to do. And so from that time, now, looking from 5 years ago, 5 years ago is when I officially started the business. And the birthday of Jackie Sweet Shapes is this Sunday, just a couple days at the time of this recording. But I would say now it's a lot more structured. I have decided this is how much I will handle and no more. I don't really care if people, are upset. If I reach my max, sorry, that's it. I really only do what I love now. I'm not willing to turn any and all orders myself ragged. The swim lesson and personal training businesses have kind of gone a little bit less. I'm not really doing them right now, but the ultimate goal. So, in talking about passions, it's so hard for me because I love so many things. I have so many businesses. And so I sit here and I go, what do I what do I want to do? I could do everything. And so right now I've been at a crossroads for a really, really long time, for probably 2 years, because I worked 100 hours a week for 2 years, the past 2 years. When I said I'm going full time, I didn't go full time. I went above and beyond. And it was really hard on my marriage. It was really hard on my friendships. I wasn't getting much sleep. So I think in my mind, I just thought, well, this is what it means to run a small business, is you just say yes to things because you need to build up, you need the money. And so I've learned a lot about boundaries. I've learned it's not okay to hurt yourself in order to help somebody else and to say yes to what they want. So I've learned so much about myself and boundaries. And I think now I'm actually kind of realizing that I don't really want to do cookies full time like I'm doing. I really want to have that as a side job, for friends and family. I still want to operate the business, but I love teaching cookie classes. So I want to transition into more cookie decorating classes, which is a sister company of the cookies. I have another business, which is that. And ultimately, I want to get back into fitness, because that's my true passion. But I think it's so hard because everybody just thinks, well, your passion is cookies, because that's what you see of me all the time. And so it's been hard because I'm such a people pleaser. If somebody says this is who you are, I'm going to believe that that's who I am, because I want them to be happy. And so I have learned so much about myself, and to learn, what do I really want? what am I passionate about? If no one else said anything, if I just, just me, what do I want to do? And swimming, teaching swim lessons really like makes me so happy.
Wow.
And it's just, yeah, that is what I really want to do. From babies to grandmothers. I've taught lessons for like 15 years, and I get more happy doing that than doing cookies. And so I don't know, it's sad, but I am in a way like sort of losing my business a little bit to do something that I really want to do. And it's hard because I've received a lot of criticism for it. I've also received like, you go girl, great, do do what you want. But the people who are like not getting orders from me because of that, they're the ones that are sad. But I'm like, I'm not sad because I'm going into more of a direction that I love, that makes me happy and is the best on my health, and I don't have to run myself ragged. So it's like what makes me happy is a little bit of everything, but not overworking myself, not overstepping my boundaries, but then realizing I just really love swimming and I want to get more into that.
So cool. What was the moment, if you can remember, that helped you to kind of take pause and realize, like, whoa, 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 what do I want?
Yeah, so probably about 6 or 7 months ago, it was a combination of a lot of things. It was my one of my best friends. She basically told me, I think you're addicted to work. At the same time, my husband kind of sat me down, sort of had an intervention. He thought it was an intervention. I was already thinking about everything, but he just basically said, you're toxic, you're, a workaholic, it's not okay.
Mhm.
And it was like perfect because God had already been speaking to me in my soul and through messages on Sunday, through devotionals. It was kind of just like everything at once was just like, what are you doing?
Wow.
And so at that moment, that's kind of when I started reevaluating what I want to do. And when I went from that October 2020 was when I went from 100 hours to 40, basically cold turkey, just said, I'm done, and just went down to 40 hours. And it was almost like my eyes were opened because I was no longer using work as a distraction or an escape, and I just had to deal with myself and say, why are you doing this? What is this worth? Look at all this time you're losing with your family. And so that was a really hard reality, but I think it's what started to get me thinking, and just slowing down is the first thing that helped me to sort of process, what am I doing? Because I just felt like I was a little hamster on a wheel, like I was just not stopping. And then when I stopped, it was like, oh, okay, this is life, And so I think for me, it was my survival mode. Was the last 2 years were so hard. So at least if I went into my cookie room and worked, I didn't have to think about how life was so hard at the time. And so when I stopped, I started to see, okay, I'm addicted to work because I'm using it as an escape, and I can't do that anymore, especially if I want to have a family one day, and have kids. I got to be there for them. And so that was kind of when it started happening. I started reevaluating my life, midlife crisis I called it, and just seeing what I want to do and what makes me light up. So
That is a really cool story to think about, especially what you shared about how God was kind of like preparing you for the conversations or just whispering things to you so that it really hit when it hit. With kind of what you're sharing, something that I really love helping women to see is exactly what you said. There's people who tell you what you should do, people who tell you what you're good at, people who think they know what your passions are. But we need to take a step back and say, okay, God, what are the passions that you've given me? What really resonates with me? And what am I going to do with that? And I believe that plays into our purpose. And so my question for you is, what does that word purpose mean to you?
yeah, so I wrote down, it's kind of like my reason for being. But I think for me, it's like when I'm most at peace and just most happy, I feel like that's when I'm using my gifts. I'm taking time to rest. I have the balance in life that I need. If I'm not balanced, if I'm overstretching myself, if I'm letting people walk all over my boundaries, I'm not within my purpose. And so for me personally, it's just making sure that I am getting time with God, making sure I'm getting time with my parents, my husband, and taking care of myself. And so I love making people smile. I love helping people. I love being generous, but I am not in my purpose if I'm doing it at my expense or my marriage's expense. And so for me, I've really finally figured out, okay, this is my purpose. I'm using my gifts and my skills not to make money, not because other people want it for me, but because it's what I want to do. I'm staying busy, but not too busy, and I'm still able to have time for the things that matter the most to me.
Boundaries. That's kind of a cool definition. It's like being able to protect yourself while also using your gifts and talents. I love that.
Thanks.
And so how are you starting to apply that as you're dreaming about the next season of life?
I would say as I think about having starting a family and having a kid, it kind of freaks me out. I'm super excited, but I'm also like, okay, there will be times that all the time, going to have to sacrifice and deny myself. But again, when you have a little one, you do have to take care of yourself in order to take care of the little one. I just remember when my sister, my nephew's now two, but when she was, when she had first given birth and breastfeeding, the doctor told her she wasn't eating enough. And he was drinking so much milk and she was breastfeeding. And she was like, oh, wow. And she was so tired. When she started eating more, she started feeling better. And so just thinking of like that as like gotta take care of yourself so you can give. I definitely have a hard time with that because I think I put others above myself so much so that I'm just willing. I don't care if I don't eat. I don't care, if if I don't if I'm not taken care of, as long as this person's okay. And you can't do that. You got to make sure you're taking care of yourself as well. Of course, there's being sacrificial, but then there's being I don't even know the opposite of that. What I described, just being reckless, I guess, and stupid. And so I don't know. I think I'm ready. I feel like I'm learning a lot about boundaries and just, okay, I can take care of myself. That's important. I don't need to feel guilty when I do that. I'm learning a lot about boundaries with friends and family members, that I can't just let people just say whatever and hurt me and just be like, oh, that's fine, and be a punching bag. I think for a lot of my life, I've been emotionally and verbally abused, like without knowing it, and just allowing people to treat me a certain way. And now I'm just like, I'm not standing for it. So one of the things I've been working on the most that God's been helping me to see is like boundaries and everything that entails, but really just taking care of myself. And of course, loving people and being generous, but not just letting people use me as a punching bag. And there's been a lot of circumstances in my life that recently I've had to go, whoa, 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 you can't do that to me. I'm worthy, and I finally know that I'm worth it and that I'm not going to let you treat me that way anymore. And so I think that's going to be really good for when I do have a child, and I'll just be like stronger, in myself to be able to be, what I need to be for that child, whoever he or she is. And also, it's just been good for me personally, just to grow in my confidence and to know that I am loved in God's eyes. I am worthy, and I don't need to be mistreated by people anymore. So,
What was it that allowed you to let other people treat you that way?
I think I have come to find that I always just sort of like allow people to act how they act and say what they want to say. And I just think I need to go, afterwards and deal with my own emotions after that. And just like, it's almost it's like a weird, like, I don't want to control them, so I'm not going to say anything. But recently I've realized, No, I can say things in the moment. I can say no, I will not be treated that way. And
Mm.
this comes from it is certain family members, it's customers sometimes will say some pretty nasty things, and the customer service rep in me goes, well, I'll just let them say that, and I'll just take a backseat to it and just like overlook it. But now I'm not overlooking it. I'm like, I'm gonna say something, you can go somewhere else. I'm
Mm.
not gonna be treated that way.
Mm.
And now that I have an assistant, I'm helping her, is like I'm protecting her. And just there was somebody who was pretty nasty to her, and I stepped in and I just said, you won't treat my assistant like that. And just being not being courageous, I think it is. I think I just didn't have much courage and just thought, okay, I'll just deal with myself. And now I'm stepping out on courage and just saying, no, no, you don't say those things. And of course, I'm not making out to be that it happens all the time. Like, I have a very loving husband who never would say anything like that. And most, like my parents, they're not like that. And most of my friends, obviously, but it's just been some people that I've just allowed that now I'm kind of like, I'm not gonna let you treat me that way anymore.
That's so important. And it's really interesting that you're saying this because this has come up in a few conversations that I've had with people recently where they're kind of recognizing exactly what you're sharing with like, why have I done that for so many years? Why have I let people treat me that way? And what advice do you have for someone who is in a place that you were before of like kind of letting people say what they were saying and processing later? And what advice do you have for them?
I would say when you know your worth and you respect yourself, you're not going to stand for that because you wouldn't treat somebody else like that. We have those that we love and respect. We would never say things like that, but yet we allow people to say it to us. And
Mhm.
so I think for me, it was like, okay, I'm finding, like that I'm growing in my confidence. I know that I'm worthy. I have grown so much in self-respect and self-love, and I just not going to be treated that way. I would not treat somebody else. And so it's almost like you realize that there is this standard, and for you, of course you would never do that to anybody, so why are you going to let somebody do that to you? And so I guess like I wish I could have told myself back then, 5 years ago or whatever, um, make sure that you respect yourself. It's so important. And then surround yourself with people who will be honest and help you to realize that you're being hurt and that you don't need to just allow that you can live a free and full life while still standing up and saying something. It's not mean. I think for a while I just thought it was rude. I'm being rude by standing up, but actually it's quite the opposite. You're giving people the opportunity to treat you the way that you want to be treated, and that's what matters, is treating people the way you want to be treated. So
And deserve to be treated. I like what
yes.
you said about you know your worth now. You know that you're worthy of being treated well, and you're not going to stand for anything less than that. And
Yes.
it also sounds like you have a great community of people around you who are willing to tell you the great things, but also sit down and have the hard conversations with you too. As you shared last October, I think is what you said with your friend and your husband, and kind of some real talk right there, right? We all need that. And it sounds like you have a great community around you.
Yes, I do.
Um, Along with the advice piece, um, so you've talked a lot about this boundary and kind of setting things up to protect yourself and in a really healthy and positive way. What advice do you have for someone who is looking to seek out their purpose?
I think it's so important, as I mentioned before, I think it's so important to slow down and process things. We really need to take time to just like shut our minds off so we can hear God, hear his voice. I think we can hear his voice through the word, through prayer, whatever, like through friends. I mean, there's so many ways that we can. And sometimes I think people get overwhelmed, like, I don't know, do I hear God's voice? And like, I think that we just like need to slow down. And when I finally slowed down and just, man, allowed myself to be more at peace was when things became pretty loud and clear. And so before, it was almost like I was using the busyness as an excuse for I don't hear God. But he's there. I just needed I just needed to slow down and just stop trying to just keep go. And so I think it's so important just to take those moments in the day to process. I did go to counseling, and my therapist helped me to realize some emotions and some stumbling blocks. But yeah, I would say the biggest thing is just slowing down. What do sometimes we don't know what we want to do, or we're so focused on what God wants for us that we're just like, well, what I want doesn't matter. And when I realize is that God works through the things that we desire, and he's given us those desires for a reason. And so sometimes, like, I just realize if I feel so passionate about something, it's for a reason. And it's not that I need to suppress that because it's not God's will. It's very, very possible that that is God's will. And that's why he's given it as such a huge passion. I don't know why I love swimming so much, but I do. And through it, I've been able to help so many people, grandparents who lost their grandkids to drowning, and they're learning because they're like, I need to learn. If I have another grandkid, I need to help them. And so like, it's so interesting to see all the people I've connected with because of this passion. And it's become more than just teaching them to swim. I'm lifelong friends with some of them that I've taught 10 years ago, and they still talk to me on a regular basis. And it's really cool that God gives us passions, and then he uses them in ways that we never would have imagined. And we don't always, know what those passions are. But sometimes I think when we slow down, it becomes a lot clearer. And then it's just a matter of listening and not saying, oh, I just need to suppress what I want. Because maybe God's speaking through those things that we want.
That's really wise. And I think maybe, and you can object, but I feel like in Christian circles or like at church or things like that, the message of like deny yourself is preached so often. And I'm with you. I'm really trying to flip the switch on that in a lot of ways, not in all ways, but in a lot of ways because of what you shared. God puts those desires on our hearts for a reason. He wants to use them for a reason. And so when we're denying those things, we're really denying him to do the work that he wants to do through us. So thank you for sharing that. That is really big.
You're welcome.
Oh man, Jackie, so many cool things we've talked about tonight. So another question is, with some of your business, you have a podcast where you also share about your kind of entrepreneurial journey. Can you just talk a little bit about that and what prompted you to begin that podcast?
Yeah, sure. So the podcast is called Not So Small Talk. And it really is for small business owners or entrepreneurs or, like independent consultants. And I got to a point where a lot of people just kind of said, oh, you should like write a book, or you should. I'm like, I'm not going to write a book. But people just were like, you have so much like life that you've been through. And it got to a point where it was pretty overwhelming that so many people wanted me to share more. And I've not always been one to like, I've always been vulnerable, but I also don't like being the center of attention. So a lot of times I just kind of hide behind, I'm like, I will be a silent leader, but I don't want to be like the face or whatever. And so it's always hard for me to even just post a picture on my business social media because it's always cookies and cakes and I kind of hide. So when I post and people like it, I go, oh, like they like me because I don't like being the center of attention. And so when I said, okay, I'm going to do a podcast because I think that people will like it. I think that people can learn, and I just want to share. And I really don't know who's going to listen. Apparently, people are listening, which is cool. But I just wanted to share from sort of my struggles and how I've created this business and kept it going. I did not go to school for business. I didn't go to school for this, and so it's interesting that I kind of just learn stuff on my own or just from researching things. And I always wanted, I always listen to podcasts about business advice. And so I was like, well, people want me to talk, so I guess I'll talk. I'll make it about me, but also about the things that I've learned. And come to find out, people are listening and they're applying some of the things that I'm talking about, because my life is very intertwined with my business. I don't keep them separate. I share a lot of personal things because my life impacts my business and my business impacts my life. And so I go into a lot of detail about how I managed a business through, the sickness of my husband, how I managed it when, that had to be our sole source of income. And so it's been really cool just to get the feedback from it. I think I have 7 or 8 episodes at the moment. I just started like a couple months ago. But I'm hoping to continue it indefinitely as long as people are listening.
That's so awesome. And is that something that you're passionate about? Education? You mentioned you really like teaching cookies, you like teaching swimming lessons, you like teaching fitness. And
Yeah.
then, so is this like a kind of a value or a passion that you have?
I would say I don't know if it's so much of a passion as it's definitely a gift that I have. And so I've learned that God has given me this gift of educating and teaching, and I don't really know why. But I've tried to I feel like people really, really like learning from me, and I haven't figured out why. But people love it, and so I've gotten to a point where that's kind of more of like a thing that I used to give to people because they want it. But I wouldn't say it's necessarily my passion. I think I get a lot of imposter syndrome with teaching. Oh, they're going to find out that I'm really not that great. But time and time again, God has really made it clear, no, you're good at it. You're going to do it. I've taught so many things. And in each of those things, in any industry that I've done, whether it be like indoor cycling classes, water aerobics, all things fitness, teaching cookies, teaching lessons, I've always been the best in wherever I'm at, and I'm the most sought after. And so it kind of scares me because I'm I don't know why everybody keeps thinking I'm the best and keeps coming back. But I've learned that I think I connect to people in a way that's uncommon. And I think people really like being noticed, and I care about them so much. I would say my passion is people. And so I just love people. That's one of my passions. And so I think that because of that, I'm willing to do something that kind of comes naturally to me, and they just feel noticed and they feel like I care about them, which I do.
That's so cool. Very, very fun. Well, Jackie, the last question I usually ask is all about what's your big dream, but we've talked about that so much, and I'm so excited for this next phase of your life. And, as an outsider, I feel like I just want to tell you, I'm so proud of you for pursuing your true passion and for not allowing what other people think you should be doing to dictate your life, but to really be listening to the things that God's put on your heart for you to do in the world. And it's amazing. You're having such an impact just by listening to him and using your gifts and talents. And I'm excited to continue following your journey.
Thank you. Me too. I am so not a visionary. And so I'm sometimes just impress myself. I'm oh, wow, I did that. Because I feel like I just live one day at a time. And my husband, he's a visionary. So he kind of helps me to think about the future. But I'm just sometimes I don't know what my future is going to hold. We'll see. I'm an Enneagram 7. I'm just no plans, just live life and enjoy it. But I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in. I'd love to hear what you learned from this episode, so feel free to shoot me a message or leave me a comment. And don't forget to subscribe for more tools to live a purpose-filled life.